Back in 1976, Kino started out. Now, back then it was basically known for like importing films, releasing films, stuff that you wouldn't normally see in North America, particularly in the US. Now, you can find all that out by going online. But what I want to do is to dive into my Kino collection. See, the Kino that we know today, the one that you're probably more familiar with, is the Kino like Studio Classics line. That would start in 2014. That'll be after Kino became Kino Lorber. That's where we got the KL from. Now, Kino as a company is a little different in the fact that it stands out in its uniformity. Whereas you have some companies that go all in with hard boxes and like posters and slip covers and magnets and whatnot. Kino really stands apart in the fact that nothing about it, like on the surface, normally stands apart. The earlier use of like the more kind of what we called like the flimsier, the earlier like style boxes are still in use. The Warner Brothers S boxes that we used to see for the Bogey McCall line, or from like one of the different stars that they would show, or the gangsters, or the film noir line, is alive and well in Kino Lorber's own film noir line, and in their stars line, where they basically have taken up where companies like Warner would go with things like focusing on a certain film star celebrity, and you'll see some of that here as well. And that's the thing. At a time when companies have gone all out to capture your dollar and have worked to do it, Kino's been able to do that in their own unique way. See, picking up a Kino Lorber release isn't always the same as picking up a like one of your bigger like hard boxes or fancier style releases. It looks like a regular Blu-ray or DVD. Here, so one of the ones I'm going to show you right now is, look into this. Billy Waters, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. It came out the first year. This is a 2014 Kino Lorber release. Alone, it just seems standard. You open it up, you have the KL symbol there, and it's got the title of the film, and it's a KL Studio Classics. Here's the thing. As you start to amass more and more of the Kino Lorber releases, they look better and better on the shelf. The uniformity, which seemed at a time like maybe not such an important thing, becomes unique and different. It's unique and different in the fact that it goes out to not be unique and different. Kino Lorber is a company that is always near or at the very top of the lists every time they start talking about like what's the company of the year. Not like, not just me, not a YouTuber, but actually when the websites and that start talking about like the company of the year, the companies that did the releases of the year, Kino Lorber is always in that mix. And I think DVD Beaver have named him company of the year the last couple of years. So what makes a company so unassuming? What makes them stand out in a world where they're not trying to stand out in the same way that so many other releases have? Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that right after this. All right, so let's get started with the Kino Lorber DVDs that I have in my collection. And this, I don't think is all of them, but these are definitely some. The first three that I'm going to show you are from 2014, the very first year that Kino Lorber started doing releases. First up is Billy Wilder's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. A long-time favorite of mine, actually. And if you haven't seen it, it's actually a really, really good film. Now, here's the thing. Kino Lorber is often known, and for me they were known initially as a company that really didn't have any special features. But even as early back as 2014, like certain films definitely had, when they're important, when they felt they're really, really important enough, has some neat special features. This has a great cast, by the way, including the fantastic Christopher Lee and Genevieve Page. Next up is a favorite comedy of mine, and again another one that's like loaded with a fantastic cast, and that's What's New Pussycat. If you've never seen this, Peter Sellers and Peter O'Toole are absolutely fantastic in this, as is everybody. If you have never seen this movie, it is about as wacky and crazy as it looks. And yes, that does definitely look like a Mad Magazine or Cracked Magazine cover. The third one from 2014 was this one right here. And again, it's another Billy Wilder release. One that I am a massive fan of. And I remember watching this when I was younger on TV so often. Anytime it would come on, I would sit down and watch it. And it's not a short movie either. It's like 160 minutes, so it's almost 2 hours long, which seems like short now. But back then, movies were done shorter than they are now, where people don't seem to know how to edit. But Witness for the Prosecution is an absolute powerhouse of a film. Tyrone Power, Marlene Dietrich, Charles Lawton. I don't have to read the names. You can see them right there. But it's an absolutely fantastic film. Also, by the way, it's starting to look nice. It's like the Kino Lorber. Next up was the wonderful 52 pickup. This has been a long-time favorite of mine since the days of VHS. So when I had the chance to pick it up, this Roy Schreider and Margaret movie just stood out. It's a fantastic little thriller. What makes it really stand out to me, though, is John Glover. John Glover is fantastic in this movie. Clarence Williams III is really, really good in it too, but John Glover just steals the show for me. And this is a John Frankenheimer classic. One of the more unusual titles from Kino Lorber that I have in my collection is this one right here. It was written by Buck Henry, and it is definitely an unusual little film, and that is Candy. Look at the cast right there for this movie. Ula Allen was absolutely stunning as the character of Candy, but this is one weird, strange movie. I absolutely adore it. We go from that to another Frankenheimer film, but and we got the Holcroft Covenant with Michael Caine, and again, just quality films. Good films you can sit down and watch almost any time. Well, some of these you can watch almost any time. Other ones you gotta set the time up for. Like who? I'm a massive Elliot Gould fan, and Elliot Gould and Trevor Howard in this really unusual film. I enjoyed the hell out of it, but man, is this a different type of film. Different in a different way would be David Lynch's Wild at Heart. A longtime fave of mine. I grew up in the 80s, and this one just hits like 1990. So I would have been in college at the time this one came out. I think I saw this one in theater, actually. There's actually some nice making of documentary on here, some different stuff, and I'm a massive David Lynch fan. I think Laura Dern is so good in this. People always talk about Nicolas Cage, who was absolutely fantastic in this movie, but Laura Dern is underrated in this one. The most 80s movie you will ever see in your life. Most 80s action movie you will ever see is Steel Justice. It stars Martin Kove, yes, the guy that plays the bad guy in the first and the third, right? Karate Kid film. And of course, it was Cobra Kai. But he's a good guy in this one. He's a good guy. We got Celia Ward here, Ronnie Cox, Bernie Casey, Joseph Campanella. Um, and in a really unusual role, we got Jan Gan Boyd, who plays, I'm guessing, it's sort of a, what's the word I'm looking for? She plays sort of maybe their, not their kid, but their adopted younger kid. Another one something else we're going to talk about a little bit down the road is this right here, Redemption, which was a sub label, one that Kino did. And this is Jess Franco's awful Dr. Orloff. But we'll get into them a little bit later. Moving away from the DVDs, I thought I'd show you some of the Blu-rays that came out in 2014 that helped Kino get their start. And you're going to see that some of these here are, some of these go together in a very important way, and other ones are just so different. So let's start off with Sam Whiskey, a Burt Reynolds Western with Clint Walker and the beautiful Angie Dickinson. Got Ozzie Davis in here as well, whose name will come up again in a directorial film. Actually, it'll come up next. Let's do that one next. Because we also got Ozzie Davis's directorial film, Cotton Comes to Harlem. If you've never seen this movie, it's absolutely fantastic. It has a wonderful cast. It is not your regular blaxploitation film. It is so damn good. I love blaxploitation anyway, but this is just a really good film. And the ending is like just spot on perfect. Next up is an early Burt Reynolds one in White Lightning. This is one that I remember watching over and over again when I was younger and searching out the sequel because I knew there was a sequel to this, but it took me a while to find it. Eventually I did, and I was glad that Kino actually put both of them out in the same year. So we picked up White Lightning, and I think within the next 2 days we had ordered Gator. And what's really kind of neat and sneaky about this is there's a feature on Burt Reynolds in like the early years, Back to the Bayou, and you have to buy White Lightning and Gator to get the entire feature. And a sequel of sorts, Avenging Force, with Michael Dudikoff. Now, what's it a sequel to? A Chuck Norris film by the name of Invasion USA. Now, we're not going to go from here on out. We're just going to go, I want to show you just how varied and unique the Kino Lorber label is. So strap in. Follow this up with my favorite blaxploitation horror film of all time, and I know you're thinking, what? It's going to be Blackula, right? I love Blackula. Ganja and Hess maybe. Also another fantastic film. But for me, the go-to is always going to be Sugar Hill. This one is really, really good. It's a standout that often gets forgotten about. Now, what's really neat is that this was still at the time when they were working with the MGM. So this was part of the MGM releases that they did. And if you've never seen this, really seriously pick this up. It's an excellent film. Robert Quarry's really good in this. He makes a really good bad guy, actually. Next up is Truck Turner. Yep, we got Isaac Hayes here. This time he's not singing the song about a badass character. He is the badass character. Truck Turner is a really good, really fun film. That is a wonderful cast. It's got an auto commentary. There's some featurettes on this one as well. And definitely a recommendation when it comes to Truck Turner. Across 110th Street with Anthony Quinn and Yaphet Kotto is a wonderful film with a fantastic soundtrack. And when I initially saw this cover, I kind of didn't want to get it. It seemed I didn't understand it. It just seemed almost like a picture, like matter of fact, like kind of blah. It wasn't like Billy Walters, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, or What's New Pussycat. But once you see the film, you understand. This is one I initially picked up for my better half, and I'm so glad I did, um, because it has two versions of the film in here, and one hell of a long uh, featurette as well. I think it's two versions of the film. There's one version of the film like a no, there's two versions: the U.S. cut and the international cut. This is a Sicilian clan. Now, my better half grew up. She is from Morocco, so a lot of the cinema that they got came from Europe. So Alain Delon, Jean Gabin, Lena Ventura were names that were big. They were as big as like Humphrey Bogart or the stars of or the Tom Cruises that you know of today. Lena Ventura particularly was kind of like that gangster guy, and she introduced me to his work. I was so glad that she did. This is a fantastic release that I definitely recommend. If you've never seen it, I had a lot of fun with this movie. But let me know if you've seen this. Do you prefer the US cut or the international cut? A movie that I saw in theater back in 1986. I would have been 15 at the time. And very impressionable. And man, was this a cool film. FX. Now, FX did have a sequel, which I don't think I do have, as well as a TV series, which ran for 2 seasons, a Canadian series, which I definitely do have. But Brian Brown is really good as an FX artist that gets set up and tries to kind of find his way out of it using the tools of his trade. It's a great, great movie. For a small period of time, 1 month to be exact, Kino sent me some of their releases for review. Here are two of them, and I wish I still worked with Kino on this stuff, but at this point, I sadly do not. That being said, there's a reason why they're one of the best companies out there. And these titles are some of that reason. Probably noticing already is there's a wide variety of Kino titles and releases. There's a wide variety of genres, and that's going to become ever more apparent as we go through. There's a couple of Western ones that I got. Showdown with Rock Hudson and Dean Martin. I'm a massive fan of both of these actors, and I really did love this movie. Has an auto commentary as well with Howard Berger and Steve Mitchell, theatrical trailer, but dug the hell out of this one. And Gregory Peck Shootout is another fantastic Western, like a really damn good old school Western if you haven't seen it. And unfortunately, a lot of people haven't. It's one to grab. It's one to definitely pick up. One that I'm sure you've gotten is this one right here. I know we all do, and probably you've gotten the 4K edition of it. At this point, I have the Blu-ray. I would like to upgrade this series to 4K, and this is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's one of the definitive greatest Westerns of all time. This came with a load of special features. I can't imagine how good this will look on 4K. But it came with 2 cuts of the film, both the theatrical and the extended cut. It's a movie I can watch anytime, day or night. It's just that damn good. But I think we all know that. It's Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Here's one. And here's one of the reasons I love Kino. Is because of titles like this. Titles I don't think anybody else would think to put out. Titles that stand out for not standing out. Here's the thing. The next movie I'm about to show you is a movie that I saw the cover of, the case of, many, many times on the VHS shelf. So it was usually out. I couldn't rent it. I was very curious by it. Had like just that, the sexy kind of girl on the cover, but it's way more than that. It's way better than I thought it was. It's very different than I thought it was as well. It's a really good film. It's a solid film, and it's a different film, and it's positive ID. It's a revenge film that goes in a different direction than a lot of revenge films do, and I adored every bit of it. We go from that to Last Embrace, which is a Jonathan Demme kind of Hitchcockian film that took me a while to get into, actually. First time I saw this, I wasn't quite sure. Like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Over the time, though, Roy Scheider, Janet Margolin, I've come to love it a lot more. One thing I always loved and didn't take any time for me to get into was this next one right here, Adventures of Captain Marvel. See, Kino's put out serials as well. Back in the day, they'd have like serials that would be like short, like ongoing, like usually like 15 or 20 minutes, like short films that would be continued. They'd have cliffhangers, and you'd have to go back week after week to go see them. They'd be usually have like they'd be at the beginning of a film with a cartoon or a comedic short, and then the main attraction. Sometimes double feature would happen. I was not alive back then, but man, I can't imagine how cool it would have been to see Captain Marvel. This is a badass Captain Marvel too, because it's Tom Toller. Yeah, Tom Toller does an amazing job as Captain Marvel, and he's brutal. He's like brutally vicious. He kills the hell out of people in this movie. Next two are ones I picked up from my better half. She's a massive fan of these films and of this character, and it is Magri. Magri sets a trap. By the way, if you have not seen this, this is like definitive Magri right here. And Magri and the Saint Fiacre case. I probably butchered that title, but it is what it is. All right, so there is a series of books called the 87th Precinct books. They're 87 Precinct Mysteries. And Fuzz is an adaptation of those books. And you can kind of tell because Fuzz has a great cast. It's all over the place. Uh, we sat down and we watched and we are like, do we did we like this? Did we really like this? And we did. We really, really did. But it almost seemed like there should have been more. Like we kind of wanted more. You know what I mean? Like just as it was getting started, and it's not a short film either. It runs 92 minutes. Just as it was getting started, I feel like there's more to this story. There's more I want to know. There's more I want to see. And sadly, there wouldn't be a sequel. Next up is Burt Reynolds in Malone, and anything Burt Reynolds, man. Especially like this era Burt Reynolds. This is 1987, like prime Burt Reynolds. Cynthia Gibbons in this one as well. Lauren Hutton's here. Cliff Robertson. Just a fantastic cast. And this one, yeah, this one is cool. If you've never seen Trouble Man, make it one of your resolutions to check out Trouble Man. I'm actually kind of surprised this thing never got remade because it's really that good, and the premise, yeah, the premise for that film is freaking excellent. Next up is a Fred Olen Ray film, Star Slammer. So it's like a prison film, a women prison film, but it's in space. With Ross Hagen in here and Aldo Ray, John Carradine, Sandy Brooks. How can you go wrong? For me, you can't go wrong with the Fred Olen Ray film. I just love the dude. Speaking of actors, of directors you can't go wrong with, Spaceballs with Mel Brooks is a classic. It's a classic for a reason. For a long time, he planned to actually do a sequel, Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2. I kid you not, that's really what it was going to be called. But I'm sort of glad that, I know there's a cartoon series and all that, but I'm sort of glad that they stuck with just the one film because it's really hard to replicate this. It's just so good. It's just so funny. And has a wonderful cast. We got like John Candy in here, Rick Moranis, so we got a bunch of the SCTV guys. Daphne Zuniga, Dick Van Patten, Joan Rivers. It's just, it's just so. It is perfectly. Mel Brooks just does great these comedies. Followed up with a Mario Bava film, Planet of the Vampires. I kid you not, their outfits kind of look like the X-Men outfits from the first X-Men film. But another fantastic title, and it's a Bava title too. We go from there to another bloodsucker of sorts with a beautiful bloodsucker though. And we get to see a young John Saxon and even younger Dennis Hopper in Queen of Blood. So if you've never seen it, she's right there. Our recommendation. Strong recommendation on the next film, which is a horror film. It's a chase film. It's a comedy. It's an action film. Much like movies like Big Trouble in Little China, it was a film that was hard to classify. Had a wonderful cast. It's a fantastic film. However, because of the fact that it's one of those extremely hard to classify films, I don't think it did as well as it could have. See, Highway to Hell is a great, great movie. See that guy in the front? That's C.J. Graham. If you're a Friday the 13th fan, you know that he played Jason in Part 6. But the cast on this one here, we got Patrick Bergin. We have Chad Lowe, Christy Swanson, Richard Farnsworth, fantastic actor there. We have the entire Stiller family in this here, and we got Gilbert Godfrey playing a notorious historical figure. Trust me, you have to check that one out. What happens when a hell cop steals your girlfriend? Well, you follow him to hell and you get her back. Next up is the absolutely fantastic Trilogy of Terror. I love this movie. I have to pick up Trilogy of Terror too. And one of my favorites, and when I showed both of these films to my better half and my kids, they preferred the second one. I know, sacrilege to a lot of people, but twas the case. Karen Black in the first one, of course, in all three stories, and Lizette Anthony in part 2. But it did kind of creep me out back in the day. We follow it up with a film that is presented in 2D and 3D, because it was a 3D film. One that I know my dad has, and it is Ape. Yeah, if you ever wondered about that Ape movie where the ape flips off somebody, here you go, right here. And the poster is technically true for the film, sort of. One of the funniest bad movies, and I mean this in the best possible way, I ever watched is this one right here, Astro Zombies. There's a Riff Tracks version of this, and it's included on here. I have yet to watch the Riff Tracks version because the movie itself is so funny that I know that I am going to just crack up watching the Riff Tracks edition of this one. Because it's with Mike Nelson, Kevin Murphy, and Bill Corbett. This is so freaking good. Ted V. Michaels, it's hilarious. There's a sequence where the Astro Zombie, who's kind of solar powered by light, attacks this girl. And the light part of him gets knocked off. So he has to take like a kind of a flashlight and put it to his forehead to get away. Yeah. It is as silly as it sounds. And yes, both me and my better half were crying in tears watching that sequence. Um, Here's one I won, actually. I'm glad I did, because this is actually a better film than I realized. It's a film directed by Curtis Harrington, and it stars Shelley Winters and the great Ralph Richardson with Whoever Slew Auntie Roo. It's one of those that would have intrigued me. I would have passed it by over and over again, thinking I should buy it. Luckily, it's one that I won, and I was able to really kind of dive into. Kino Lorber were big when it came to like collaborating with other companies as well. Scorpion and Code Red being two of the main ones. This is a Scorpion release here that was distributed by Kino, and it's To All a Good Night. It was actually directed by David Hess, probably best known for kind of his kind of grimier, sleazier roles that he did. But this is a Christmas horror film, and a lot more fun than you think, actually. Just a heck of a lot more fun than you think. Jennifer Runyon's in this, who's probably best known. If you don't know her from Charles in Charge, then you probably know her as the girl that Bill Murray is hitting on at the beginning of Ghostbusters. She completely gets every one of the psychic tests wrong, but he keeps telling her that she's got it right, and he may have to look into it a bit more. Yes, she is that gorgeous blonde. Next up is At the Earth's Core. Again, another fantastic little title. I actually really dug this one. It stars Peter Cushing, and I'm just a massive fan of these here adventure films. Yangari was a fantastic revelation. I love the sequence where he kind of gets high and dances with the kid. I'm not joking. Like this is a very different film. If you have not seen this one, yeah. So Korean kaiju. That's how I can play. How I can describe it to you. My better half loves the action adventure ones, and like a lot of the things like other it's not so much Magnificent Seven. That's my type of thing, but the Dirty Dozen and titles like that. So Ambush Bay was kind of right up her alley with Hugh O'Brien, Mickey Rooney, and James Mitchum. She just loves these here titles, and me too actually. Being a kid of the '80s, there's no way I couldn't pick up this one. It's a buddy type of film, but a different one because in this one it is Tatum O'Neal and Irene Cara. So if you haven't checked out, I thought this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and actually it's been a while since I've seen it. I really got to go back and watch this one again. Maybe I'll watch that one today. Vincent Price and Tab Hunter in War Gods of the Deep. If you haven't seen it, why not? I mean, it's a really fun little title, and I think I owned this one originally on MGM Midnight Movies release, but glad to have it on Blu-ray. Another Michael Dudikoff title here is River of Death, and this is kind of a period piece. So if you haven't seen it, look at the cast: Robert Vaughn, Donald Pleasance, Herbert Lom. Like we got L.Q. Jones. How can you not want to see that? We followed that up with a couple of the more sensual films. The first two, Emmanuel and Emmanuel 2 with Sylvia Crystal. Both absolutely fantastic films. They also put a Goodbye Emmanuel, which is the third one, and the kind of the swan song for Sylvia Crystal and Emmanuel for quite a while. But if you've never seen it, you should see it. Next up is a slasher film, I kid you not. And it is not just any slasher film. It is a slasher film that's done by Umberto Lenzi under his Harry Kirkpatrick name. And that is Nightmare Beach. I'm going to strongly recommend this one. I had a lot of fun this one, actually. A lot of fun. Speaking of movies that like really meant something to me, No Retreat, No Surrender. Oh, man. There's a international cut on here as well. And if you've never seen it, it's a really good film. Like later on, it would be kind of like Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he's really like he's the bad guy in it, and not for long. It's mostly about Kurt McKinney, who also has like that, because I like this the soap opera like connection. We got Wim Smith as the star for a change in Seven. Seven is an Andy Sedaris film, so if you've collected a lot of those Andy Sedaris releases that were put up by Mill Creek, Here's another one of them right here, and got a decent cast in this one too. See, we got like Barbara Lee, of course. Yeah, she's a lot of those. Susan Kiger, Martin Cove is in this. Also got some classic stuff here. Bela Lugosi in White Zombie. Really, you should watch White Zombie. It's a really good film. Ah, it's one of the originals. This is one of the 2014s. This is Breakheart Pass, one of the early titles that Kino Lorber put out. Actually, God, I love this movie. Yeah, I really love this movie. Sorry, I just had this like wave of like happiness, which happens to me sometimes when I look at a movie that I really enjoyed. Next up is one from the Library of Congress, and it is Betty Davis and Pat O'Brien in Hell's House. Just stunningly wonderful film. Now, that's not the only Library of Congress one, because there's another one too. One that I used to have on an old, cheap, like VHS tape. And I mean by one of those cheap, like $5 VHS that came out around the day, maybe $2 actually. So upgrading this one was a big deal for me. Um, Definitely like an early role for Betty Davis, and it's of human bondage. This is such a good film. Leslie Howard's good in this, and I'm not a massive like Leslie Howard fan. I can find it can be a bit dry sometimes, but this is just such a good movie. Next up is another one of the 3D titles. It's 3D martial arts though, with Dynasty. Not in any 3D, in Super 3D with quadraphonic sound. This has a ton of really nice special features on there. And this was done in conjunction with the 3D Archives, who do the best 3D restoration in the business. And Kino has been putting out a lot of 3D Archives releases. Follow this up with a movie that, for the longest time, I never thought would come out. The Wildlife. I watched this one and was such a massive fan of this one here. See, The Wildlife is one of those movies that, for like, I think maybe it was for like the music or something, like you just couldn't get it. It just was something that people thought would never get released. And I think they did have to change up some music, but just to get the film out there, like look at this cast. Got Chris Penn, Leah Thompson, Ilian Mitchell Smith, Jenny Wright, Eric Stoltz, Rick Moranis, Hart Bachner, Randy Quaid. It was written by Cameron Crowe. So if you've seen like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, this is the sequel. That's the follow-up. Next up is 8 Million Ways to Die. Again, another film that is just done by Hal Ashby. It is very strange, but very, very good. You would see this like this. I want to talk about like a long time between like sequels, between like seeing a follow up. So the character in this one here, played by Jeff Bridges, uh, would be played by Liam Neeson years later in a walk among the tombstones. I think that's the title. Peter Sellers' The Party. I know this one is seen as being like a bit more problematic now because his. But I actually really enjoyed The Party when it came out, and I still think it's a really good, kind of really fun, really funny film. If you've never seen it, recommendation is high for that one. I followed up with Le Professionnel with Jean Paul Belmondo. How can you not go right with this guy? Just such a good actor and such a good film. Code of Silence with Chuck Norris. I love this movie. And so a lot of times the movie is made by the bad guy, and Henry Silva plays a great bad guy. Charles Bronson and Assassination. Like this era Charles Bronson here in 1987, to me, could do no wrong. We get to see Jill Ireland here as well. And let's dive right into one that I think is really underrated and that hasn't been seen enough. And this is Walter Matthau and Bruce Stern, The Laughing Policeman. I hadn't seen this one. Yeah, I think I seen it once when I was really young. but I've never heard anybody really talk about it, and I really did enjoy this movie. I think Walter Matthau is one of these actors that we know of, but severely underrated. Severely underrated actor. Just an original, you know, classic drama. Peter Fonda and Yuli's Gold. You know, this is definitely going to tug the heartstrings. So just know that going in. Followed up with The Secret Invasion. We got great casters: Stuart Granger, Ray Filone, Mickey Rooney, Ed Burns, Henry Silva. They got that Henry Silva thing going on again. And one of my all-time favorite Kino releases is the one I'm going to share right now. I, the Jury. I, the Jury is just a very 80s film. Now, it's got a very 80s cast, and it is very, very 80s. So, is that slightly problematic? Maybe a little bit, but it's a Mickey Spillane novel. So, it's it's Mike Hammer, and we got Armand Asante as Mike Hammer, Barbara Carrera's in this one here, Lauren Landon's in this one, Alan King, Jeffrey Lewis is here, Paul Sorvino. Just a great, great, great. Further to the Kino Library. Let's take a little side trip and look at the Kino Redemption line. Yeah, Kino had some incredible titles in their Redemption line. I'm actually putting them in order. That I have them now as I speak, and one other side one as well. But I really wanted to kind of highlight these here, from Jesus Franco to the fantastic work of Pete Walker, to some different, just slightly sleazier stuff. Yeah, sleazier than Just Franco, especially with this Just Franco, because this was a little bit on the disappointing side for Franco. Oasis is a Zombie, and it's a magnificent cover, but yeah, it has a magnificent cover. Everything else here, though, I absolutely adored. House of Whipcord was a fantastic movie by Pete Walker. If you haven't seen it, like, really see it. Sheila Keith is absolutely fantastic in this, and quite a revelation. Schizo is another one that I really, really enjoyed. The title, does give a little bit away, but Pete Walker did a great job with this one. And the lead in this one, Lynn Frederick, is really good. You probably know her from Vampire Circus if you're like a Hammer fan. Jack Jones and Pamela Stevenson and David Doyle in The Comeback. So if you have not seen The Comeback, it is a Pete Walker film you have to come back for. There you go. That's my dad joke for the day. Sergio Greco made The Sinful Nuns of St. Valentine's, a movie that I actually initially saw on Netflix. Yeah, Netflix used to have cool stuff back in the days, my friends. But really did like this one. If you're a nunsploitation person, you're gonna love it. And I had all the Pete Walker stuff like in single editions, and then there's a box set that came out that had all the stuff I didn't have for that they put out in here in Volume 2. We got The Flesh and Blood Show, Frightmare, House of Mortal Sin, Home Before Midnight, and like two different Pete Walker films, The Big Switch and Man of Violence. So my favorite on here is probably Frightmare, though I think there's a lot of really good titles on here. And a Jean Rollin title. I kid you not. I have another one here, Shiver of the Vampire, but I can't find it right now. That was a DVD, like a Redemption DVD. Is this one here, Schoolgirl Hitchhikers, on their Jezebel line. So if you haven't checked that out, it's actually not a bad film, not bad at all. And with that being said, I return you to your regular Kino releases. Covers and box sets. First ever kind of slip case, it was a side loader that I got from Kino, was this one right here. And this is a really good one, actually. It's kind of an interesting curio. And now they do these this kind of line where they talk about these films, these kind of like early exploitation films from the 30s and 40s, like Test Tube Babies and stuff like that. But prior to that, there was this one right here, Devil's Needle and Other Tales of Vice and Redemption. It's a really, really fun one. We've got The Devil's Needle, which runs at 6 minutes long, Inside of the White Slave Trade, which is a 20-minute short, Children of Eve, which is 73 minutes long. Definitely worth checking out because it's definitely some different stuff. And yeah, love this release. It came with a kind of a film notes booklet here, like just a small booklet talking about the basically the I guess the a very special a very special episode of it today. But it's the best way to see this stuff. Follow this up with just a regular like slipcover one, but a nice one is Valdez Horses, starring Charles Bronson. Sent to me by a viewer who knows that I'm a massive Bronson fan. Really glad to get this one, and of course, you haven't seen it. Otherwise, Chino, Valdez Horses is an absolutely fantastic film. One that I had to pick up for my better half and myself because we're massive Fu Manchu fans, and we had the Indicator set. But Warner Oland actually played Fu Manchu in these two in this double feature, in The Mysterious Dr. Fu Manchu and The Return of Dr. Fu Manchu. I was really stoked to get this one, and we still have yet to sit down and watch it, which we really should. What we did watch, however, were the next two, which were actually TV movies. They were The Night Stalker with Darren McGavin. I really need to get the TV series actually that goes with this. Just a great, great film. And the follow-up, which often gets like kind of maligned, but I really did like it. It's The Night Strangler, and actually is directed by Dan Curtis. If you haven't seen this one, this is actually a really good film that people just say, oh, it's not as good as the other one. I think it definitely stands that test of time. And that brings us into like some TV shows as well. We have The Master here, which was a one-season series with Lee Van Cleef, done with a ton of people that would go on to become famous. People like some that already have been, some that would be, like George Lazenby, of course, who played Sherlock Holmes, played James Bond. We got Chris Bernard, who go on to be in Wings. We have Dave McCallum from Man from U.N.C.L.E., Doug McClure, Bill McKinney is in this one, Demi Moore, William Smith, of course, Stuart Whitman, and George Maharis as well. With the great, of course, Sho Kozuchi doing all the real stunt work. Lee Van Cleef was not doing well at this time, but it was a great little series. It only lasted the first season, and I think it basically was one of those shows that lasted as long as it should have. Sometimes a season, is good enough when it comes to a series, and for this one here, it definitely was. It was a great show. I'd say watch it like in spurts though, because like a lot of shows like that tend to be formulaic, and if you don't give it the chance to like kind of grow and kind of breathe, then it's going to seem very kind of very formula to you. Because those shows are meant to be shown like on a weekly basis, not like to be binged nowadays. Nowadays, where we have like shows that are the ability to binge shows, they know ahead of time. Okay, well, let's switch things up. But back in like the 80s and 70s, there was a formula. They were kind of like comfort shows. So there was you knew kind of when you went from week to week what the show was going to be about, and binging them from 5 or 10 episodes sometimes can make it seem a little bit a little bit less, and I would say lesser, but it makes you enjoy it less. Next up is Outer Limits season 1. They did a massive box set for this one right here. 32 episodes in the first season. Just a really, really good show. If you've never seen this, you really owe it yourself to get this box set. The second season only had 17 episodes, so that meant they put a ton of features on here as well. Look at this. Just let that sink in. You can even pause the video if you want to. season 2. Definitely worth checking out. I had to open this up because I just noticed that one of my discs got slipped out. It also included the booklet. It's the same as the first one did. Be careful with these things. There's only 3 more to go. We have OSS 117, a 5-film collection of a meant to be a more realistic take on kind of like the James Bond type character. Well, I guess kind of prior. I think the one of these might come before James Bond, but this becomes very James Bondish by I think the second or third film. It starts off with Curran Matthews in the role of with the lead. The second one with Robert Hassan is really, really good. By the third one, we got Frederick Stafford, who would be there for the third and the fourth film, and we finished off with John Gavin, actors that actually were in the running to play James Bond. The very first volume of the Dark Side of Cinema film noir is this one right here. It's been reissued since then, and I recommend you pick it up. I also have the DVD, not these films, but they had a DVD film noir set that put out as well. That, however, isn't here, unfortunately. But it came with 5 films: Witness to Murder, A Bullet for Joey, Big House USA, Storm Fear, and He Ran All the Way. Just 5 fantastic films, great film noirs. Their newer film noir box sets, I think, usually have 3 films in there, as do these here collections. This is the Kino Lorber Collection Volume 2, and every film on this one's a banger. It's absolutely fantastic. We have Hands Across the Table, which I really enjoy, her and Fred McMurray. Love Before Breakfast might be my favorite on here, actually. And The Princess Comes Across. Actually, I don't know, because all 3 of these are really, really good. Kino Lorber is absolutely stunningly fantastic in all these films, and if you haven't checked them out, please make sure that you do. So back to where we started. Why Kino? Why did such an unassuming company become so important, become such a huge voice in the whole film collecting industry, to take on such a huge part of the cultural zeitgeist of it all? Well, I think it comes down to the films. There's a wide variety and a wide selection of not just films, but really great and often really important films of various genres, of various types. It doesn't pigeonhole itself into one style of film. It actually even branched out further recently with the Kino cult releases that are coming out now, including finally we're getting a big release for the Ilsa series. I'm very excited about that, actually. But that being said, with every single release that I showed you, when I look at them, I know immediately this is a Kino release. It's a film that I want to have in my collection. I'm glad to have it. And there's certain times when I'll hear a bit of film and I'll hear that somebody else is doing it. I'll be like, no, this should have been a Kino release. And every one of those there fit under the Kino banner, because the Kino banner means so much to so many people. There's a reason that they've consistently been a company that's their quality. The features, when they do put them on there, are interesting. The titles are different, and they can be exploitation, they can be blaxploitation, they can be westerns, science fiction, they can be just heart-wrenching dramas, they can be action films, but they're never, ever not interesting. Kino is a company that I enjoy collecting. They lend themselves to the not as expensive range as you'll see some other companies will go. even with a Kino like 4K release, it's not gonna break the bank the way that a lot of like the modern 4K boutique label releases do. So I'm glad that I've been collecting Kino, and I'll continue to collect them for a long time to come. So there we go. Why Kino? Because they are Kino, and they've stayed true to their mission statement to be that. My name is Aaron, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next time here in the Call to Cinema, where we'll be looking into another collection. That one, you'll find it soon.